the person if we want to use neuroenhancement, we should also look for ways of morally enhancing the person as well. And Bill McKibben was American and is a writer and ecologist. He claims that it's unpostponable to set a limit to the biotechnological research, especially through policy and legislation, because the human nature should not be changed, and some scientists are getting close to doing so. So that's a totally different opinion. Now, this issue of moral neuroenhancement is really interesting, and I have a few slides on this. Again, Julian Sobolesko, director of the Oxford Center of Neuroethics in the United Kingdom, he claims that moral and cognitive enhancement must be developed together because we may become more intelligent, but we still have to be human, and maybe more human if we are more intelligent. We are multidimensional, holistic creatures. Sean Spence, a psychiatrist from the University of Sheffield, he wrote this nice article published on the British Medical Journal of Psychiatry last year. He claims that we are already doing it with the patients. If the patient are compliant and the patient have anxiety, aggressiveness, antisocial personality disorders, and they are treated and they take the medications, well, we're already doing it. We are already checking the morality, the action, the way they behave as people. And with alcoholic addicts, it's the same thing. For people who like genetics, this is quite interesting. And those little two animals at the top, they are not mice. They are bulls. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly. In Italian, it's arvicole. It's a very difficult word. And in fact, I didn't know it before I came here. And there are two kinds. Mountain bulls are very promiscuous. They just don't spend time with their females. But their cousins, the prairie voles, are monogamous. And they're cousins in terms of related. And the males will remain close to the females. Now, what they looked for a gene, and they found that there are some receptor subtypes for the arginine vasopressin, AVP, and they found that monogamous voles had a greater number of the receptor subtypes for AVP than the other voles. So they used genetic engineering, and they transformed the promiscuous mountain voles and faithful ones by changing this gene. This is, I didn't actually give the reference, but I give the reference of another interesting paper published last year. And this is actually nice studies done using data from a Swedish cohort of couples. And in this case, it's the women complain about the males. Usually it's the males who are promiscuous. Well, in animals at least. But, well, basically they found there is an association between the AVP receptor subtype of the voles and a similar gene in men. And they reviewed basically the data of all these couples. There were 522. And they related to partner bonding, perceived marital problems, marital status, and there was an association between this gene, and which is similar to the one found in voles, and basically moral behavior in a couple. There are possible forms of moral enhancement, and Thomas Douglas wrote a nice article on the Journal of Applied Philosophy last year, and he said, first of all, there are examples in the literature where genes play a role, and there's a Dutch family with monozygous twins where they found that a point mutation, the structural gene of monoamine oxidase A, it's called the WARA gene, is believed to cause derangements in the serotonergic neurotransmitter system, which together with a certain environmental condition can cause amoral behavior. So genetic could theoretically help in that respect. Also, MRI has been used for to look at race aversion, and especially the amygdala lights up a lot, so basically this aversion towards different race groups that are shown in normal people could be probably taken care of in a certain way. So it concludes that it seems reasonable that in the medium term, which is 10-15 years, moral enhancement technologies that operate on relatively simple emotional drives could be developed. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone that's important because it's important in lactation, in lactation and delivery, and is produced by the hypothalamus and stored in the posterior pituitary. Its structure is very similar to the ABP, and studies have shown that if you take oxytocin nasal spray, the trust in humans is increased, and there are studies done, especially to look at people who were engaged in gambling, and they were willing to accept social risk arising from interpersonal interaction, especially after taking oxytocin. And there is oxytocin available on the market, and it is actually taken from the internet. And this is a liquid called Liquid Trust. And so a dose of oxytocin as a spray can make people more empathic. And the slogan is interesting: trust is power.
Yeah, I should want to trust that people who use that slogan.
We have to use this spray before we talk about that.
Those scratchy sniff ads.
This is a paper by Jason Rees, and Rees is an assistant professor by business administration in the marketing unit at the Harvard Business School, another American, and basically look at the responses of young college students and regarding enhancement, and show that people are more reluctant to enhance aspects of themselves that they consider to be fundamental to self-identity, especially social and emotional abilities, such empathy and kindness were considered fundamental to self-identity in this study group. And so basically, these people were not willing to change anything in this respect, or very little in this respect. And also they claim that enhancement obtained by mental training is preferred by enhancement through a pill regimen. Okay, there is a form of neuroenhancement that we could paradoxically call subtraction or memory blunting. Okay, because there are some pharmaceuticals that reduce the emotional component associated with traumatic memories, and it's used experimentally in post-traumatic stress disorder. They have to be injected. They are beta blockers, well-known antihypertension medications. They block the production of substances like adrenaline and noradrenaline, so the emotional component of the feelings is certainly blunted. But they have to be given immediately after the traumatic event or during the traumatic event. So obviously that can be done, but we can ask these people to recall their memories. Okay, so the memories will be stored in a different way after the injection of these pharmaceuticals. Propranolol, how does it work? It blocks the effects of these substances and diminishes the perception of the traumatic event by the victim, and so the brain stores this new and modified memory. Okay, it's going to be a different memory. Every time we actually store the memory, we store a different memory anyway. But is this something we should do? Because the emotional components of our memories and personal identity are sort of close. And I take this from Carter Snead, who is associate professor of law at Notre Dame University in Indiana. He actually gave a nice lecture at the Neurotic Society meeting last year in Washington, D.C. Well, I want to review this slowly because I think it's very important and it goes into depth. Memory is connected to our personal identity. It allows us to be consistent over time. We are what we are also because we remember. Or we are what we do, or we're learned. By changing the emotional components of our memories, we might add on our personal identity. The recollection of a certain event and the event itself will not be connected anymore because of the emotional blunting. So the perception of our identity and our authenticity might be affected and possibly falsified. In this case, the event and the emotions provoked by the event will be detached and therefore will be forever unrelated. So the comprehension of the moral value of a tragic event will be diminished. At the same time, the attraction towards what is perceived as beautiful and worth living could be abolished. Because we need to remember something which is unpleasant to appreciate what is pleasant, correct? We need to have that. There is a personal and social obligation to remember the past, also to avoid that tragic facts, such as the Holocaust, could recur. As a consequence of the above, also reduced moral responsibility could occur, and with it, a reduced interest and capacity in addressing and reporting severe moral facts, especially if these pharmaceuticals